Let me read to you this really interesting little section out of Peter Kalm's journal. He's traveling from Albany, New York, up into Canada at about the 1750 or so, and he stops at a location called Fort Anne. At that time, a disused English fort in the sort of northern New York area there. And here, let me relate to you the story about Fort Anne and General Nicholson. General Nicholson built this fort in about 1709. At the time, it was called Fort Schuyler, but that's not what it says here. It says, in 1711, the English resolved to attack Canada by land and by sea at the same time. A powerful English fleet sailed up the river St. Lawrence to besiege Quebec. General Nicholson, who was the greatest promoter of this expedition, headed a numerous army to this place by land, the Fort Anne, to attack Montreal at the same time from thence. But a great part of the English fleet was shipwrecked in the river St. Lawrence and obliged to return to New England. The news of this misfortune was immediately communicated to General Nicholson, who was advised to retreat. General Nicholson was about to leave it and went down the river. He was about to leave to attack down the river Wood Creek in boats ready for that purpose when he received the accounts of the disaster that beset the fleet. He was so enraged that he endeavored to tear his wig, but it was too strong for him, so he flung it to the ground and trampled it, crying out roguery and treachery. He then set fire to the fort and returned to New England. Such a great story. You know, it turns out that these people in history are just like us. They have all the same kind of foibles, all the same kind of problems. So many times we kind of look back at history and these people turn into caricatures or into perfect people or into perfectly, miserable people. But the truth is that the people in the 18th century were just like us. They had just the same kind of problems and were frustrated in the same kind of ways. And it's so interesting to read in these kind of personal accounts. While this story was part of this bigger political thing, this war that was happening, Queen Anne's War, which is one of those wars that happens in North America that basically we lose in history. Nobody talks about Queen Anne's War, but it happened, and all these events took place. So it's really interesting to kind of dig back into these books and have, up pops a brand new war that we didn't know anything about or probably didn't study at all in school. So it's great fun to read about these things in history, and it's great fun to get these personalities that we can extract out of history and learn about this personal story about a man in the context of this bigger political event. So much fun to dig into these journals, read about these experiences these people had in the 18th century. And here's somebody relating an experience sort of 40 years after the fact, and he's at this location of this burnt down, disused fort. So a great story in this. I really encourage you to dig into these books whenever possible. If you've got a chance to really read into history, it's so much more fun than it looks like from history class. And it's always great to connect with it by living history too, by doing it, by putting on the clothes, by going out and camping, or by going to these recreated forts and seeing what life was really like in the 18th century. Really so enlightening. I want to thank you for all your great support coming along today, reading about this little story in Peter Kalm's journal, and I want to thank you so much for watching.